World leaders take part in the high-level political forum of the 78th General Assembly of the United Nations organization, focused on the Sustainable Development Goals. 48 communities and other ancestral authorities in Guatemala demonstrate to demand the resignation of the Attorney General and other members of the Public Prosecutor's Office and the justice system. Heavy rains in northwest of the Democratic Republic of the Congo caused a landslide that killed at least 18 people. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. World leaders are participating in the high-level political forum of the 78th General Assembly of the United Nations organization focused on the Sustainable Development Goals starting on Monday. The meeting will last until Tuesday, September 19. The meeting will be held at the organization headquarters in New York City, United States. Among the central issues to be discussed by the leaders of the 190 member nations are climate change, the war in Ukraine, and the economic, humanitarian, and security crisis facing the world. During his speech, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, stressed the need to generate a global plan focused on rescuing the Sustainable Development Goals. In this context, the President of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, offered his remarks on the main topic of the gathering. The head of state said that the reports prepared by the Secretary General contain irrefutable figures that reflect a rather grim reality, and even before COVID-19 pandemic, the world was already off track towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Díaz-Canel also stated that the midterm review of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is taking place at an extremely critical juncture in which developing countries face multiple challenges and unjust economic order that perpetuates inequalities. Regarding this topic, said that at the rate none of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals can be achieved, and warned that more than half of the agreed targets will be missed. The Cuban chief of state said that what is urgently needed is the political will to truly leave no one behind and overcome one of the most complex crises humanity has ever experienced in modern history.
The midterm review of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is taking place at an extremely critical juncture in which developing countries face multiple challenges and an unfair economic order that perpetuates inequality and poverty. The reports produced by the Secretary General contain irrefutable figures that reflect a rather grim reality. Even before the 2019 pandemic, the world had already deviated from the goals towards the Millennium Development Goals.
Earlier, following his arrival in New York, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermudez held an exchange with the island's diplomats on the results of the recently concluded summit of the G77 and China, a bloc chaired for the first time by the Caribbean nation.
To have convened a summit of this magnitude at the present time in the midst of the situation that the world is facing, and in view of the United Nations General Assembly, was a great challenge. The one who thinks that Cuba is isolated has crumbled the argument without any bias of vanity or false pride. The country was at a tremendous height.
The Cuban head of state announced part of his agenda in which the Group of 77 will once again play an important role.
There is also a meeting of the Group of 77 that will give continuity to the one in Havana. We will work on the convocation that we will have for other events that are associated with the pro tempore presidency of the Group of 77, and in continuing to denounce the blockade and the inclusion of Cuba in the list of countries that supposedly support terrorism. I believe that is going to be a difficult and complex event, but we come with the decision that Cuba will also achieve diplomatic and political victory.
The President of the United States, Joe Biden, will propose a new reform to the United Nations Security Council in the 78th edition of the General Assembly of that high-level international body. As stated by John Kirby, spokesman of the National Security Council of the White House, during an interview conceded to a British media, the former military assured that his country will propose to take a look to the structure of the council. The inclusion of 5 or 6 new members could be one of the requests. The Council is currently integrated by 5 members: China, Russia, United Kingdom, France, and the United States, which have the right to veto, and other 10 members with non-permanent status. Washington could greenlight the addition of Bharat, formerly India, Germany, Brazil, and Japan. Nevertheless, a draft with the possible reforms to the United Nations is required to start the process. The conflict between the U.S. automakers and their employees has entered a critical phase, confirmed Shawn Fain, president of the United Auto Workers Union. Fain asserted that General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, known as the Big Three, have no excuse for delaying the wage improvements demanded by their workers in virtue of the positive profit margin. The union leader affirmed that there are decades of lags, and if the employers fail to present better offers, they will extend the conflict. Just the week in which the Detroit International Auto Show begins, the union rejected a 21% increase and affirmed that they deserve the same as the executive, which reached 40%. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. 48 communities and their ancestral authorities in Guatemala demonstrated on Monday to demand the resignation of the Attorney General and other members of the Public Prosecutor's Office and the justice system. The municipal mayor's office explained in a statement that they demand the resignation of Consuelo Porras, Rafael Curruchiche, and Freddy Orellana because they agree with the President-elect Bernardo Arevalo, who points them out for interfering with the democratic process in reference to the general elections of 2023. The mobilization for democracy will arrive to Guatemala City, capital of the country. Colombia's Special Jurisdiction for Peace holds a hearing for Army soldiers who will admit their participation in false positives in the department of Casanare. The entity holds the hearing for former members of the Army's 16th Brigade, who admitted their direct participation in 296 cases of homicide classified as false positives carried out between 2005 and 2008. The hearing is part of the process being carried out by the Truth Recognition Chamber on case number 3, in which 24 people involved will admit their participation in war crimes and crimes against humanity they are accused of. The agency received versions of 104 witnesses. For 7 months, it prepared the hearings by interacting with the victims and the accused. Murders and massacres of social leaders and former FARC fighters in Colombia decreased during the first month of this year. This is the report elaborated by the Observatory of Human Rights of the Institute of Studies for Development and Peace in the past. The information supported by the National Protection Unit refers that there is a decrease of 22% in the murders of social leadership, reference with respect to 2022. The same happens with the execution of former guerrillas that have decreased by 17%. While the massacres registered a decrease of 18% when comparing with the period with 2022. In the past, recognizes improvements in the situation but affirms that there is still much to do. In Argentina, the candidate from opposition coalition Together for Change, Leandro Sdero, won the election at the province of Chaco, obtaining over 45% of the votes. The current Peronist governor, Jorge Capitanich, acknowledged the electoral defeat in the first round against Sdero, who will be governor of Chaco as from next December. After 9:30 p.m., Capitanich thanked his supporters and collaborators and promised an orderly transition with his successor. At that time, almost 70% of the votes had been counted, and Sdero obtained 46.3% against 40.5% for Peronism, while the candidate of ultra-right Liberty Advances, supported by Javier Milei, only obtained 3.7%. The first round of national presidential elections will be held in Argentina on October 22nd, although many provinces have already held its regional polls for local authorities. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, presented a 10-point plan to alleviate the immigration crisis in Italy, but several members of the Eurobloc rejected it or present conditions for its fulfillment. Poland has rejected the plan, calling it a diktat and not a pact. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki stated that his priority is the security of the country. France too does not fully welcome the proposal as it commits to help Italy with border controls, hard expulsions of undocumented migrants, but will not accept any asylum seekers from the island of Lampedusa. Although the pressure has eased on the Italian island, residents consider the initiative a resounding failure. China's foreign minister Wang Yi arrived in Russia as he pays an official visit to the Eurasian nation until September 21st. The head of the Communist Party's Central Foreign Affairs Commission office has already met with his counterpart Sergei Lavrov. According to the Russian Foreign Ministry, during his stay, the head of the Chinese diplomacy will attend the 18th round of Russia-China strategic security consultations. They will also discuss issues related to the regional and global security situation. The Chinese foreign minister is coming from a meeting held in Malta with Secretary Antony Blinken, where they also discussed the peace plan for Ukraine. On Sunday night, the Russian anti-aircraft defense eliminated a Ukrainian drone over the southwest of the Crimean Peninsula. The troops shot down the drone at around 21:30 local time. There are almost daily Ukrainian drone attacks on facilities located on the Russian territory, both in the areas near the front line and on the outskirts of Moscow. Air defense systems also destroyed a drone in the Belgorod region. Russian areas bordering Ukraine, such as Bryansk, Kursk, and Voronezh, regularly report projectile impacts, drone incursions, and various attacks from across the border, so the residents have to move temporarily to prevent greater risks. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. The government of Libya announced that special measures will be taken in order to aid survivors after Tropical Storm Daniel hit the country. The government of National Unity announced a set of measures to aid survivors after the devastations caused by Tropical Storm Daniel, which has left over 11,300 casualties in the eastern city of Derna. The tragedy took place on September the 10th after two dams collapsed due to the heavy rains brought along by the storm. On the other hand, the humanitarian agency informed that 170 people lost their lives in the country as a result of the heavy rains, which resulted in flooding. Citizens keep up on searching for their loved ones with the hope of finding them alive or at least identifying their bodies to bury them. On Sunday night, heavy rains in the northwest of the Democratic Republic of the Congo caused a landslide that killed at least 18 people. The tragedy occurred along the Congo River in the village of Lisal, which belongs to the province of Mongala. The Civil Association forces report that the victims live in houses built at the foot of the mountain. They warned that the rain caused heavy damage and buried under mountains of mud the populated area, so that the number of victims could increase in the following hours. Cesar Limbaya, governor of the province, has requested urgent machinery to clear the whole areas and rescue as many survivors as possible. In Iran, authorities reported at least 7 injured after the flood generated by the intense rains affecting the country. The head of the search and rescue organization, Babak Mahmoudi, said that one of the 7 injured was taken to a medical center for proper care. He also pointed out that the flooding is taking place in the coastal province of Gilan, northwest of the country, causing damage to infrastructure in 3 cities and other towns. In that state, the official also said that 12 operational teams with 60 rescuers were sent to the area to carry out rescue work. Forest fires in Lebanon are on the rise due to burning of brush and debris. The speed of the winds and low humidity have caused the flames to spread. In this respect, the government prohibited the burning of dry grasses in lands located less than 500 meters from the forest. By the way, in recent years, the country has lost around 12,000 hectares of forest as a result of forest fires. Back in 2019, 194 forest fires ravaged large areas of Lebanon's forests and residential areas in both the Shuf group and other areas to the south of Beirut. In Chile, about 11,000 people are currently isolated and 238 homeless after heavy rains in the south of the country. According to Chile's National Disaster Prevention and Response Service, SENAPRED, there have been several landslide events affecting vehicle traffic routes, river overflows, and flooding of streets, with the regions of Biobío, La Araucanía, Los Ríos, and Los Lagos as the most affected. Authorities warn that some impacted areas could face a local agricultural emergency. Rescue and civil protection officials are on alert to respond to any emergency and support those affected by the heavy rains. On August, Chile experienced a frontal system that left more than 25,000 people affected and 3 people dead, over 21,500 houses destroyed, and more than 42,000 people isolated. We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.